Okay, boys and girls, as a quick reminder, here's a little video on how to do the delta math of this week. So the first skill that you're going to be doing is simplifying radicals. As we've learned, you must always simplify it with a perfect square number, a perfect square number. For example, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. At least for now, that's good enough right there because 100 is 10 times 10. Perfect square numbers get their name from numbers that are the same that can multiply into them. So 49, 7 times 7. Whoops. I'm sorry, I did not write that well. 8 times 8, 36 is obviously 6 times 6, 25 is 5 times 5, 16 is 4 times 4, 9 is 3 times 3, and 4 is obviously 2 times 2. These are all known as perfect square numbers, and what we're looking for is a possible multiple that goes into the number that we are given. Goes into the number that we're given. So here, we're given 48. We must find a perfect square number that goes into 48. So it looks like when I look at that, 4 will go into 48. So simplifying this radical, we can say 4 times 12 goes into 48, which means the square root of 4 times the square root of 12. But 12 can be simplified even more. Right? The square root of 4 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. Why did I do that? Because 12 is made up of 4 times 3. Now that we have that, we can do square root of 4, 2. Square root of 4, 2. Square root of 3, well, that can't be simplified, so we got to keep it there. But 2 times 2 is going to give us 4 to the square root of 3. So let's just keep this simple. Keep it simple. We're going to do 4 to the square root of 12 as we worked out first. And then we can say, well, 12 is broken up into the square root of 4. So here we have 4 square root 3. Try it out. And there we go. Wait a second. Take the square root of the perfect 4. Oh, geez, David, what are you doing here? No, 2. What am I doing? Okay. Square root of 12. Well, that's okay. Okay. Yeah, because we did this the long way, they want us to do this the long way. Square root of 12, well, we just worked it out, was 4 and 3, as you have it on the right-hand side. Try it again. Square root of 4 is 2 and square root of 3. Yeah, there's different variations that you guys can give for this. Yeah, depending on how good your multiplications are. This one, I did this the long way. But as you can see, there's a lot shorter ways of doing this. Quickest path that they gave us was the square root of 16 times 3. Didn't think about that, right? So let's take a look at another problem. Let me just erase what we have, I'm going to keep the numbers on the right because the perfect square numbers are what we're always going to need to think about. So here we have 80. We know that 80 can be made. How can 80 be made with the numbers on the right? Let's think about that. Well, 4 times 20, right? So that's the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 20. We're going to go about this the long way. Whenever we use 4, it's probably going to give us the long way of doing this. And 20. There we go. And now 20 can be broken up even more, right? Because if we know the square root of 4 is 2, 20 can be broken up by saying, 4 times 5, right? So now we have 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. So let's check that out right now. We're going to do the next step. 2. And I'm going to type in here 20. We just solved the square root of 4, the square root of 4. Now that we have 2, let's type in what we have on the right, 4 and 5. And then square root of 4, 2 and 5. And 2 times 2, 4 and 5. And that should give us the correct answer once again. Like I said, chicos, you can always use the square root of 4, but it is going to be a little bit longer. When you start thinking bigger, you might get there a lot quicker. When you start thinking bigger, you might get there a lot quicker. Let's take an example right here as we have it. Let's take an example right here as we have it. If your multiplication is decent enough, a number to try quite often is 16. 16 is a really nice number because if we keep trying 4, it's going to be a little bit longer. But let's see. I am just because of multiplication, I know that the square root of 16 times 7, 16 times 7, look at this, 2, 4, 7 times 1 plus 11, 112. That's the number we're looking for, right? So we have the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. Yeah. So let's type that in. So here we have the square root of 4 and the square root of 7. Try it out. Whoops, did not do this the right way. Remember, you got to do it step by step. 16 and 7. Yeah. 16 and 7. Oops. Let me just jump in a step right here. 16 times 7, right? And then we know that the square root of 16 is 4 and 7. Yeah, 4 and 7. So let's type that in. 4 and 7. Yeah. And that's can't be simplified anymore. All right. Let's give it one more shot. And here's a good one. Here's a really good one. All right. I'm just going to do the same that we did earlier. Erase these numbers. Yeah. Erase these numbers. If you're good with your multiplication, try and divide 224 by 16. Let's see if we get a good answer there. If I divide 16 divided by 224, and a quick little hint, feel free to use the calculator. 224 divided by 16. We need to get a whole number, no decimals, no decimals. Remember, no decimals. And we get 14. Yeah, so we know that 16 times 4 is going to give us 224. Yeah, so for this number, we know that 16 times, and what did it tell us again? 16 times 14. Yeah, so 16 times 14. So that when we have is the square root of 16 times the square root of 14. Let's type that in just to make things simpler. 16 and 14. There we go. Try it. All right. So there we have it. 16 and 14. Square root of 16, 4. Square root of 14, well, can't really be simplified anymore. Can't really be simplified anymore. So 4 and 14. And we can submit this answer. Okay. One more, just to make sure everyone understands this very clearly. Yeah, you are looking for possible multiples. You are looking for possible multiples here. Okay. We're taking the radical by finding possible numbers that are perfect square numbers. So we have 160 here. Now, 160 is a hell of a nice number. Look at that. Gives us a nice little 16 right there. So we know that 16 times 10, right? 16 times 10. And that means the square root of 16 times the square root of 10. All right, times the square root of 10. So here we have 16 and here we have 10. Type it in. And now we know the square root of 16 is going to give us 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. And, well, the square root of 10 can't be simplified anymore. So just type in 10. There we go. All right, so the key element here, everyone, and I'm going to say this one more time before we move on to the next skill. I'm sorry for being super pesado. Perfect square numbers. Look for the possible multiple, okay? One of those numbers will have to go into the number that you have. one of those numbers will have to go into the number that is given, okay? All right, let's take a look at the next skill that you have. This is what we've been focusing on this week. So here, we're going to solve quadratic equations, And remember, we need to have the squared component solito. Yeah, it cannot go with anything else. It needs to be solito before we take the square root sign, which will cancel out the 2. And then we know it's a plus and a minus. Okay, so just a reminder, you have to have the square root symbol, solito. Okay, solito. All right, that needs to be all on its own before we take the square root. So here, quick little hint, we have positive 18. So if I subtract 18 on both sides, we're going to end up with 2x squared negative 28 minus 18. Remember, negatives, just add the numbers together and put a negative sign, right? Add the numbers together and put a negative sign. So that's equal to negative 46, okay? Negative 46, but ojo, we got a 2 there. So we're going to divide by 2 and divide by 2, yeah? Now we're going to end up with x squared equals 46 divided by 2, well, negative 23, yeah, negative 23, okay? Sorry, positive 23, because we're dividing it by not 2, David, come on. Negative 2, dividing it by negative 2. Notice that we have a negative 2 here, yeah? Negative 2, everyone. My bad for not verbalizing that. So we have this x squared equals 23. So take the square root on both, and x will be equal to the positive minus of 23. And that's a prime number. So we know that it cannot go into anything else. The square root of 23. All right, there we go. Sorry, chicos, I just had an internet problem. I'm sorry about that, chicos. I just had an internet problem again. All right. One thing we're going to have to always remember is using this button. Remember, this x squared is equal to, yeah, a. Therefore, x is equal to the positive minus square root of a. Remember that, okay? El punto más clave, and always simplify. So here we're going to need to move all the numbers over. Plus 47, plus 47. 11 plus 47, that's going to give us 58. Yeah, 58. So now we have 2 brackets x plus 3, close bracket squared, equals 47 plus 11, 58. Now we're going to divide both sides by 2. Divide both sides by 2. That's going to give us I know, I've just been on mute. I'm sorry, chicos. This internet is just, why? Madre mia. Okay. Just a quick reminder, you cannot take the square root until everything is gotten rid of. Everything is gotten rid of. So there we have the square root of 3 equals x plus 1 minus 1 minus 1. So now we have x. I'm going to do another example. Madre mia. Negative 1 plus the square root of 3 as our final answer. Just remember, it's going to be negative 1 plus minus, always plus minus, everyone. Always plus minus, yeah? Always plus minus, okay? So that's going to be -1. Click the button, plus minus the square root of 3, okay? I'm sorry about the internet problems. I cannot control that, okay? Let's do one more because the last two examples have had internet problems, okay? Let's do a couple more. Remember, you must have everything isolated before you take the square root symbol, In this example, we got to distribute, everyone, distribute, okay? So now we have 3x squared minus 6 plus 5 equal to 5. Simplify the 2, -6 plus 5, -1. 3x squared minus 1 equals 5. How are we going to simplify this? Add 1, add 1. Now we have 3x squared equals 6. Then we're going to divide by 3. Divide by 3. Now we have x squared equals 6 divided by 3, everyone? 2. But not quite done. Take the square root and say ciao ciao. Take the square root and say hello. Yeah? Plus minus the square root of 2. So plus minus the square root of 2. All right. Okay, let's do a couple more. Okay? Let's take another look. Clear. Here we're going to do the same. Remember, remove the additions or subtractions. Move the numbers first. So 20 minus 6, we're now going to have 2x squared equals 20 minus 6, 14. Then divide by 2. Divide by 2. And here we have x squared equals 7. What do we need to still do? Take the square root and say ciao ciao. Take the square root and say hello, plus minus, okay? Plus minus. So we have the plus minus of the square root of 7, all right? Plus minus the square root of 7, okay? I'm going to do a couple more because the first examples were absolutely pitiful. Ojo with this type of an example. You're not dealing with x squared, you're dealing with negative x squared, everyone. Ojo. So subtract 8, yeah? 7 minus 8 is going to give us negative x squared equal to -1. 7 minus 8. But, ojo, we got -1, so divide by -1, divide by -1. Now we're looking at negative divided by negative, positive. So x squared equals +1. Not quite done. Take the square root, plus minus, and say ciao ciao. So now we know that x is equal to the plus minus of square root 1. The plus minus of the square root 1. So plus minus square root 1. Submit. Plus minus square root. Ay, madre mia, no, because one time, okay, let's look at that question again. Square root of 1, everyone? Ah, geez, this is a perfect square number. 1 times 1 equals 1. Madre mia, no. 1. Yeah, square root of 1, okay? Comma, -1. Because we're able to take the square root of 1. Yeah, so it's plus minus 1, okay? In some examples, please put a comma. In some examples, please put a comma. New problem. Madre mia, no. All right, this one's a tricky one. And if we're messing that one up, I'm going to make this one a little bit longer. Okay, so plus 47. Remember, get rid of all the numbers before we take the square root. 32 plus 47, 49. 49 plus 30, 79. So x minus 4 squared equals 47 plus 39 is going to be 79. Then, because the squared is on the outside of the brackets, on the outside, we're going to take the squared root and say ciao ciao. We're going to take the squared root and say plus minus. Okay? Now, what are we looking at now? We have x minus 4 equal to the plus minus square root of 79. Remember, you need to add the 4, add the 4. But even though it's separated, the 4 does not go into the radical. Big no-no, big no-no. X is equal to 4 plus minus the square root of 79. 4 plus minus the square root of 79. 4 plus minus the square root, and 79 can't be simplified because it's a prime number, okay? Because it's a prime number, okay? One more. Make sure that everything, this is the skill that's a little bit trickier than the others, okay? This is the skill that's a little bit trickier than the others. Move the numbers over, 2x squared equals 14. Now we're going to divide by 2, X squared equals 14 divided by 2, 7. How are we going to get the answer? We're going to take our little friend, Mr. Radical, square root and say ciao, ciao, square root and say hello, plus minus the square root of 7, plus minus the square root of 7, everyone, all right? Okay, I've shown you guys most of the problems. I do want to check out one of these that's going to, here, let's look at this one, all right? Just to make sure everyone's clear on this. What are we going to do here? We're going to subtract 10, Ojo, because what you have is -3, not +3. -3. Yeah, when you subtract -2 from -10, -12, divide by -3, divide by -3. X squared is equal to -12 divided by -3, 4. Ojo with this type of a question. Ojo, because when we take the square root, we're saying goodbye to the x squared, but we have now the square root of plus minus 4. You guys know what the square root of 4 is. It's 2. Positive, or, comma, it's -2, because -2 times -2 would equal 4, and +2 times +2 would equal 4. So ojo with this type of a question, because you will have to type in -2, comma 2. Ojo with that, okay? All right, that's every type of question that you guys will be able to see. This one is the important one, the one that I just did with you guys, okay? The one that we just did. Ojo when you have the answer of a square root with a perfect number, with a perfect square number, okay? Ojo with that, watch out. All right, let's take a look at the next, like I said, I'm not giving you guys too many questions this week, and you do have time in class, okay? Here, we're going to need to simplify to solve all values by factoring, and you will need to use the comma. In order to do that, we're going to move all the pieces onto one side of the board. Notice we have a little problem here. We got an X on both sides. However, in this situation, and I will show you guys a couple examples of this, we're going to subtract X from X. Why? Because you cannot solve until you have 0. You must balance the equation. You must balance the equation. So when we subtract X on both sides, what is it going to happen? We are canceling out this term, and we are being left with 0. That is what you want. That is what you want. You cannot solve until you have 0. You cannot solve until you have 0. Remember, f of x, when it's equal to 0, we have x intercepts, everyone, when it's equal to 0. So you must have a 0 on one of the sides. You must have a 0 on one of the sides. Now that we have x squared minus 25, simplifying this, it's going to be one of those difference of squares. X plus 5, x minus 5. Let's test it out. X squared is going to give us x squared plus 5x minus 5x minus 25. Plus 5 minus 5, 0x. X squared minus 25. Yeah, so we know that this is going to be the solutions. What is the answer? Well, looking at it right here, you guys will have to use the zero product property. X plus 5 is equal to 0 and x minus 5 is equal to 0. Therefore, x equals -5. Therefore, x equals 5, okay? So when you type in the answer, you must use a comma, -5, comma, 5. You must use a comma. You must use a comma. You must use a comma. Let's take a look at another question. I'm going to get rid of this. It's a lot of stuff right here. Okay. Remember, what's the problem here? We need to isolate and have 0. 0 right there. 0. So if I add 3x and add 3x, now we're going to have x squared plus 7x minus 30 equals 0. We must have 0 on one side of the equation. I don't know how to say that any better. We must have 0 on one side of the equation. Knowing what we have here, we're looking for multiples of -30. Well, 10 and -3 will make sense, right? So now we have x plus 10 and x minus 3. Let's make sure that works. X squared plus 10x minus 3x outside using FOIL. Everyone, yeah, you can always check your answer by using FOIL. Minus 30. Simplified to x squared plus 7x minus 30. Is that what we had from the beginning? I think so. So now that we know it's going to be x plus 10 equal to 0 and x minus 3 equal to 0. X will therefore have to be -10 and x will therefore have to be 3. How do we know that? Because you're isolating the variable, and that's leaving you with the answers. X minus 10, 0 product property, everyone, 0 product property. So -10, comma, 3, and there we have it. All right, let's look at a couple more of these. This one's going to be a little bit easier. Let's do one that's going to be a little bit challenging. There we go. This one's good. This one's a good challenging one. Let's clear this up. All right, what's the problem? All this is here. We need to move it to the other side. Move all this to the other side. Move it all to the other side. So I want to add 2x and add 3. Add 2x and add 3. Now we're looking at x squared plus 10x and -3 plus 3. Well, that's nice enough. That's going to just cancel it out, right? Cancel it out. So 10x, x squared. Wait a second. Give us 1 second here. What's going on here? So now that we've done this, we have 0 on one side. Okay, yeah. Here we go. We have 0 on one side. Remember what we've learned in class about factoring a trinomial. Factoring a trinomial. Here's a tricky question. What is it that's able to go on the outside? Greatest common factor, what you've learned with me before. X can go on the outside. We have x plus 10 equals 0, right? Greatest common factor. Now we have x, because let's check it out by just x squared and x times 10 plus 10x equals 0. Yeah, that's going to work out perfectly fine. It's going to work out perfectly fine in this scenario. So remember that if we have two x's, we're going to need to separate them. Yeah, remember the 0 product property. Term A times term B must be equal to 0. Therefore, A must be equal to 0 and B must be equal to 0. 0 product property, everyone. This is a big concept. We've done it last year and we're doing it again. So x needs to be equal to 0 and x plus 10 needs to be equal to 0. So x 0. Okay, that's already done for us. -10. So what do we have left? We have x equals -10. And there we have it. All right, there we have it. X equals 0, comma, -10. All right, whoops, 0, -10. All right, this is a tricky question. This is a tricky question when you don't have a C term, when you do not have a C term. Okay, let's take a look at one more question. This is a good one that we had, very similar to the beginning one. X squared minus 1 equals 0. Well, they've already given us 0, so that's nice. But remember, you're going to be dealing with the difference of squares. When you don't have a b term, it's just going to be the same number, but a positive and a negative in both sides. So x plus 1 equals 0, and x minus 1 equals 0. Well, minus 1, plus 1, plus 1. What are we left with? X equals negative 1, x equals plus 1. Yeah, and there we have zero product property. Yeah, negative 1, comma 1, negative 1, comma 1. All right. And one more just for luck, because there's been internet problems today. Surprise, surprise. Okay, last one. Remember, what are we trying to do? Move everything onto one side. Move everything onto one side and then simplify. You must have 0 on one of the sides. So we're going to do the following. Plus 6x minus 5, plus 6x minus 5. Here, 11. Okay, so we have x squared and negative 11 plus 6. That's going to give us negative 5x. And plus 5 minus 5, well, that gives us plus 0. So there we have it. Yeah, but we can ignore this plus 0 and just factor it as we have it. What is the two numbers that can go on the outside? Well, x, the variable, and x minus 5 equals 0. So now we have x equal to 0 and x equal to 5. All right, and x equal to 5. There we have it. Remember, if you don't have a c term, you must factor out the x. You must factor out the x. All right, I'm sorry for the internet problems on this one. Hopefully it'll be better in the future and not raining. On that note, I've left you with fewer questions than last week, okay? You will have time on Wednesday to either do your project or Delta Math. It is up to you. On that note, have a good day. And remember, 6 p.m. Thursday. That does not mean it should be late, Mr. Martin. That does not mean it should be late. I don't accept late homework for formativo assignments, okay? No late homework for formativo assignments. On that note, everyone, have a good day, and we'll see each other soon. Ciao, ciao.